Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me, as he does on all of our episodes of the Hoop Troop podcast, is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And for those of you loyal listeners, which is mainly just Tim, you're going to notice that it's only us two today. So we're undergoing a new experiment because me and Luke tend to have more time on our hands than Michael and Mark. We're not cutting them out, but we're going to record more regularly. They can join us whenever they want and, add their basketball or, pop culture type references as they want. But yeah, so we're coming back. The season just ended yesterday. 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Bucks 1-6, which I liked both the teams in the finals. So I was happy for Giannis. I was happy for, of course, Bobby Portis. But all things considered, it was a pretty good finals.
I wanted to see CP get a ring. I wanted the.
So, kind of. I get why you're saying that, but he's kind of a dirty player.
He is a little bit of a dirty player. Everyone's everyone complains about this Scott Foster calling the game stuff. And don't get me wrong, he does make outrageous calls sometimes. But when you think about it, Chris Paul himself deserves a little bit of it, right? Like the dirty plays and the trying to draw cheap fouls and things like that. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that, but
I definitely agree with that. Also, as I just mentioned, how we're cutting Mark out of this, he is now joining. So let me admit him. He's going to get in here and just absolutely disrupt us. All right. So we should be getting Mark in 2 seconds. There he is. Oh, we got Mark, and Mark's got a microphone. He's connected to audio.
I can't see him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, baby.
I can hear him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you recording
there
already?
We go. Okay.
Oh, yeah. We figured you weren't going to join. So.
No, I didn't think I was either.
Wow.
Did you already do the intro?
I did. Yeah. So you dodged that bullet.
Right. Well, I recall. Hey, Luke. Good to see you, man.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you? But as I recall, the previous intros, they went with me as always. And then you listed two other names that I don't think were with you. And could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I did already. I explained that we're not cutting you out, but we have too much time on our hands and can record more frequently. And then you and Michael join whenever you see fit. Is kind of.
I just think history will remember this differently. Also, if you notice, I'm using a mic. If you thought you were the only one who could use a mic, I've got one too. Buddy.
Wow! Congrats.
And maybe I don't know if Mike has clued you in, but let's just say there's going to be a little competition in your neck of the woods in terms of audio content. I don't know. It's like the Lakers versus Celtics. I think there's going to be a huge,
Are you going to start your own rival podcast? Is that your plan?
Not with Mike, but he's doing some music for it. He can hop on, but he's doing the intro. Let's just, I don't want to speak about it too much, but let's just say I've got some episodes banked, and it's kind of a hit podcast. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Interesting. Yeah. Mark betraying us.
I got a question. Is Mike always using a mic?
No.
If you think about it, no.
Is he always using a mic?
Too punny.
Oh, I get it.
I liked it.
It was over my head.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mark. I thought it was pretty cheesy. I thought it was pretty terrible, but
sure. Well, I'll leave you guys to it. Don't edit this out. I want this to stay in.
But wow, so we're getting the rival podcast. You know what? We'll plug it here. Do you have a name picked out yet?
Yeah, we'll plug it.
It's still in development. Just with a friend from home, and it's not sports related at all.
Wow. Okay, I'll plug yours.
We'll plug it. We'll shed some of the Hoop Troop fame onto you.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your guys' viewership numbers, and they're crazy.
Just awesome.
Yeah, but I might tack on a little segment at the end, which is just reviewing the last episode of the Hoop Troop podcast.
I think your fans will love it.
I think they will too. All right. Well, I'll let you guys get back to talking about whatever.
I mean, you're welcome. You're welcome to stay, but
don't want to. I'm just too busy. I wish I could stay, but can't do it. So you moving in August 1?
One week. That is the plan, and Hell yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm doing like a soft move, so
everyone's doing
is my lease start, but I'm not actually gonna end up moving in until later than that.
That's such a
I have to buy crap. I don't know. I'm not ready.
Yeah. Okay. So. Also, I have a cold right now, not COVID, everyone, because I got tested. but
Oh.
there's a cold going around NYC, if you've heard of that.
I got some kind of cold. Like I feel like
Yep.
ever since I came out of my shell, like all of a sudden I was
Mhm.
just getting like I got a weird
Yeah.
sickness that like wouldn't go away.
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's
COVID
that's
though. But
yeah, I got tested. Yeah, I have like a sore throat and I'm a little congested.
wow, go take a nap.
Nah, I saw Mike and Brian last night, told them, warned them. Yeah. Oh yeah, actually you were in that chat and you didn't
Yeah, no, I couldn't
you
get
didn't
in.
come out.
I couldn't
Huh.
get from
They didn't
suburbs of New
let you
Jersey.
in. They didn't let you into New York from the
No,
suburbs?
yeah, no. They were like,
Right.
you're too ugly.
Mm,
You have to
yeah.
wait until August 1st.
Yeah, that makes sense. That
That's I mean,
tracks.
that's why they don't really let you into Manhattan. That's why you're in Brooklyn.
They don't let me
So,
into right.
Yeah. But
Well, that's awesome, man. I was gonna
That's-
let you sit in that for a bit and
Thanks.
really
just let it
really on
fester.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, have a great pod.
You enjoy your new podcast, I guess.
I will, and it's gonna take direct aim at you.
Good.
Specifically, not you. You're cool, Luke, but Matt, you're
Good.
going down.
Good. Yeah. No, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark, you're welcome on here whenever you want. The door's always open. You'll get the links
Thanks.
every single time.
Can you turn off the waiting room? Because next time I would like to show up unannounced.
Just come in rogue.
Yeah. Because also I'm not going to do it every episode. But I do think it would be funny once every 10 times to unannounced just kind of show up.
Show in. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Okay,
Oh,
cool. So
yeah,
turn off
I'll-
the waiting room.
I have to learn how to turn that off, but fine. That works.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, great. Well,
All right.
anyway, toodaloo.
All right. Bye, Mark.
Later.
Bye, Mark.
Later, dude.
Do I have to boot you? Oh, okay, you left. All right. So
There
yeah,
you go.
there's Mark addressing his not exit from the podcast, but his lack of a routine presence. Anyway, back to Chris Paul. He's like, I understand he has that dynamic with Scott Foster, which like he's 0 of 13 in the playoffs or whatever it is. And like there's realistically so much to say about his playoff career and how that's been affected by officiating. But at the same time, like, do you think if Scott Foster didn't call a couple of those games that the Suns win the series? I really don't. It's like, I don't want to just make that like a big reason for it. But yeah, I mean, there's enough of a trend here to think that it's significant.
And I think we talk about the officiating where it's like Scott Foster and Chris Paul, but I don't know, would it be so hard to believe that, there's a referee that LeBron doesn't like, the way, Tony Brothers calls the game, makes it difficult for LeBron to play? I don't know. But
I mean, in all fairness, I feel like Scott Foster is universally disliked. Like, it's not just Chris Paul. I just think
yes, 100%.
But like the numbers do kind of stagger a bit towards Chris Paul. Like they definitely are a bit more extreme with him. But yeah, he's pretty terrible across the board. So like, I don't know. I don't want to just put it on that. I think it's funny. Like, and as a spectator, I think it's like to see this keep happening is kind of funny. But like even back when he was on the Rockets, and remember they sent that letter to the league saying like he shouldn't be officiating our games or whatever it was.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Like there's got to be something there. And like if you're Scott Foster, after seeing them go through that and send that letter, and then just through the years of seeing Chris Paul kind of be like a jerk in your direction, I would be biased. And like, I feel like maybe the league should do a little something about that. Like, I feel like there are ways to kind of avoid it, but maybe don't let him be the head ref in the NBA finals against that guy. But I don't know. Like, as far as I can tell, like, I do think that the Bucks won the series independent of that. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see Chris Paul get a ring.
I think moving Giannis to center was the biggest difference the Bucks could have made.
Yeah, I mean, I think they made this is another thing that I feel like throughout the playoffs and really the past God knows how many seasons has been Mike Budenholzer doesn't make adjustments. He doesn't play guys big enough minutes, that whole thing. All things considered, like he really did that all playoffs long, and especially in the finals. After going down 0-2 against that team, like they looked lost those first two games. And then next thing you know, they come back, and maybe it's just playing at home. Like they only lost one game all postseason at home. Like maybe it was just, it gave them confidence. I don't know. But Budenholzer made some adjustments that clearly worked. Like I think the way they used Drew defensively, like you can look at his matchups across games. I think I actually sent you a tweet with that.
I think you did.
Where they started having him guard Chris Paul more, and then as he got more ineffective, they switched him on to Devin Booker, and then that made an impact. And that's why, look at the numbers. Booker put up 19 points in the last game versus 40 the 2 games before that. So,
True.
like, I think interesting little tweaks like that went a long way. And, then obviously you have Giannis going for 50 in the last game and 40 in 2 other games. Like, there's
He's
just
unreal.
truly unbelievable. And I think it is. It's, I know a lot of people are going to give us that same argument of, well, if there weren't injuries, this wouldn't have happened. Like, if LeBron and AD weren't hurt, the Suns probably don't beat them. And then Jamal Murray's hurt. And then you have the Clippers losing Kawhi.
There's an asterisk on every title. There's no such thing as a perfect title.
That said, the Bucks probably would have lost the Nets. Like, if we're
100%, if the Nets were completely healthy, no chance.
They're also like a weird KD like toe away from losing that series, even without Harden and Kyrie. And I mean, I know they played some of the games, but like Harden was a shell of himself when he was playing, and then Kyrie got hurt in game 3 or whatever it was. But yeah, like, but then again, that happens. Like, look at Kawhi winning in Toronto. Like,
everything. I mean, again, LeBron in the bubble saying, like, he beat the Miami Heat, who, were barely even in the playoffs this year. There's, Draymond getting ejected in 2016, right? You can go back and go through any finals and say, well, and that's the, the standpoint from someone who wants to discredit greatness, right? Rather than just saying like, oh, like it was a tough journey. Yeah, they got a little lucky here and there, but like, is winning an NBA championship all about skill, or is there a little bit of luck involved too, right?
Right. And so even, I mean, you go back, you look at every finals, look at 2015 with Kevin Love getting his shoulder dislocated and Kyrie being
100%.
hurt. Like,
if LeBron's second best player on that team was who? Timofey Mozgov or something like that?
Like,
right?
Pretty much. Yeah. Honestly, like it was a pretty bad
Matthew Dellavedova.
Like, no one holds that against the Warriors. Like that is a legitimate title. And then, I just feel like every year there's something where someone is going to say, oh, but this, but that. Like, no, this is perfectly legit. Like it's a shame that there were so many injuries, because I feel like people are going to cling to that a little bit more than they should, because I do think that what Giannis did was incredible. Chris Middleton was pretty erratic, and like he had some bad games, but when he was on, oh my God, like he really proved that he is like a bona fide star. Yeah.
Do you think he
doesn't get the love he deserves, but still.
Do you think Chris Middleton should have been included in the finals MVP conversation?
No, I feel like Giannis ran away with it. That said, I don't think it's egregious for bringing it up. It's not like, I feel like, if I'm trying to think of a good example of this in past years, like I feel like you could almost treat it like, actually, let's look at last year, for example. Let's look at LeBron and Anthony Davis. Like, I don't think it would have been crazy to say that AD could have been considered for the finals MVP, but LeBron was just better. And like AD didn't have game in, game out as good of performance as LeBron did. And I'm not even saying that LeBron was like as spectacular. Like, I think LeBron last year was not nearly as good as Giannis this year, but still, like, I still think that, you can kind of pick the guy who, clearly deserved it, but I don't know. I also just think that the Bucks supporting cast was better than what the Suns were working with. And like,
I mean, if you think about like the third best player on both those teams, DeAndre Ayton also didn't have DeAndre Ayton had been excellent all playoffs long. Mm-hmm. Playing insane. I think when Brook Lopez came off the floor, he started to struggle a little bit being matched up against Giannis. And then on the other side of the equation, you have Drew Holiday for the Bucks, the third best player. I think Drew Holiday, the last couple of games, had shown that he has value. And I think a lot of people discredit who he is because he does struggle offensively some nights, right? But I think the upgrade defensively over Eric Bledsoe is a huge difference. He made that game-saving strip against Devin Booker, potential game-saving. We don't know if Booker hits that shot or not, but and we talked about his defense a little bit. He essentially shut down Devin Booker in the last game, and he made it very difficult for Chris Paul when he was guarding Chris Paul as well. So,
no, totally. And I think you having brought up Ayton too, I think is a super interesting point, because it speaks to Budenholzer's adjustments, because Ayton looked great in those first 2 Suns wins. And then I think that the Bucks realized that they could kind of play him off the floor a little bit. They could attack him because they are a large team. Like if you want to send out the big lineup, you could. But then you could also, you could also force him to run by putting Giannis as a big, even switching Bobby Portis in there a little bit more and having a quicker option instead of Brook Lopez. Like I'm not saying that those are great options, but it makes him have to kind of change up his strategy more and more and more. And I think it's harder to be effective when you constantly have to, like, you're not just doing the same thing over and over and over, which he kind of was doing in the first 2 games. Like he was really just getting whatever he wanted. He was so impactful in the paint. And then you turn around and it's like, you're making him guard on the perimeter. Then you have to guard inside and all that. So I just think it was, granted for a 3rd-year player, that's a lot to ask to be able to go step up on that stage and do that. And I don't think he did poorly, but I do think it became clear as the series went on that he wasn't able to be that impactful 3rd star where, maybe you have one of Booker or Chris Paul playing well, the other one isn't. You need someone else to step up. The Bucks kind of had that, and I'm not saying that necessarily outside of Giannis, where it was if Middleton had a bad game, Drew stepped up, because it wasn't necessarily Drew, but you had Bobby Portis go for 20 points in some games, or you had, PJ Tucker playing awesome defense too. You had Brook Lopez scoring points. Pat Connaughton would come in and do well. So like, I don't know, every once in a while the Suns had the Cam Johnson game, but beyond that, there really wasn't much help outside of those 2 options on offense.
Do you think moving forward the Suns need to develop Ayton, or you still think they need to find? Let's say Chris Paul's moving on. I think it's realistic to think that the championship window for the Suns is probably dwindling in the Chris Paul era. Do you think that Ayton can develop into that second option for the Suns, or do you think it would be more viable to try and find some type of big free agent in the upcoming years? Try and sign like a Jaylen Brown or someone potentially to pair with Devin Booker in the next 5 to 6 years.
So I feel like there's a couple things to unpack here. I think Chris Paul, I think the window for him to win a championship isn't closing. It's changing a little bit. It's like changing its shape because he's not going to be the best player on the team to go do that anymore. I think he has to appreciate that, accept that, and take a back seat. And I'm not saying you can't be like a part of a big 3. Like if he were to go, I don't know, there are a few different locations. If he were to go to the Clippers, I think they would absolutely have a shot. If he were to go to the Lakers, they would absolutely have a shot. Granted, you have some of these teams that are, hamstrung with salary cap, but if he were to go to like a team like the Sixers, I think they would have a shot. If he was to go to a team like the Heat, I think they'd have a shot. I think if he were to go to teams that already have established stars and good players and systems, yeah, totally. I think that. I do think he probably could do it if he stays with the Suns. I think a lot would have to break their way, and I think players would need to get better, but I do think it's possible. But so that's my first thing. I just think he's not going to be that lead guy. 2, and I'll stick with the Suns and I'll go with Ayton. I think his improvement year over year has been so impressive that I do feel like, at least in some capacity, you can keep him, whether he's your number 2 or your number 3, as like a true core piece to your franchise moving forward. I think Booker is a very good complement to that. And if they could get a point guard as Chris Paul moves on, or if Chris Paul stays, maybe you get someone to fill in. But I feel like some combo where he's almost like the Bosch, where he's not bad. He's really more just, playing a role instead of, being a dominant big man, like a Shaq to a Kobe. Sure. I think then it would work. I just think that in the current NBA, the age of having like a dominant center that wins you a championship is kind of faded. And like,
look, it relies more on the wing type players like a Kawhi, Paul George, LeBron James.
Right. But if you go back in time now and look at all these championship teams, like a lot of them did have good centers, like realistically, like solid role playing bigs. Those fade a little bit. Like I know looking at Draymond, but he did. I mean, if you look, he was physical in the post. He would do all like the nitty gritty inside stuff that not everyone wanted to do, which is why his stat lines are crazy. And he has like 15 rebounds and whatever. Like it's adapted a little bit. So I think
offensively, he does a lot that a traditional big couldn't do. And that boosted the play of Curry and Thompson, Kevin Durant when they had him, other guys like that. You think I totally think that Draymond has value outside of just a post up.
Totally. And I think that's the thing. Like Ayton does have that mid-range game. And I think that shot will continue to expand. It's a nice looking jumper, but So I think he's going to keep tooling up and getting better. I think going through this whole experience makes him better. And I think just having learned from Chris Paul, I'm sure he taught him plenty of interesting little things about pick and rolls and what to do. He's going to be good. And so I think you keep with it, but you're right. If you can nail a third star in there, preferably a point guard, because I know Booker, obviously does need the ball in his hands a lot, but he's not a true point guard. I think that could be a pretty deadly trio. But I don't know. I think there's a lot to be excited about for the Suns. Obviously, they just made the finals, but they did it with such a young team outside of Chris Paul. I think that realistically, there's still I don't know how. I guess it depends where Chris Paul goes next summer, but there's still a threat in the West next year for sure. I don't think much changes. And
they're still a playoff team for sure.
Right. And especially if you round out their bench, their bench wasn't great. Dario Saric got hurt. They really didn't have a backup big man. Frank Kaminsky was coming in. Campaign was good, not really in the finals, but he was good throughout the playoff run. But again, you can get better backups to support you. Cam Johnson was really the only one coming off the bench and I guess, yeah, he was coming off the bench. Jay Crowder was starting. But anyway, that combo, they pretty much had 6 guys that they could rely on. And so you're not really going to be able to make that true championship push against deep teams like the Bucks without it. So I think they round out their bench. You retain Chris Paul somehow. A team's still pretty damn good. I don't know. I could see them getting back there. I think Booker was pissed. Did you see him watch the confetti come down?
I think Booker's very mad. But
he's going to get back.
I think I was talking about it with you guys a little bit where I was saying, I think Booker's a good player right now. 100% consistently going to score 20 to 25 points a night. But there's a difference between being able to pour in that 20-25 every game, day in, day out, and being that type of scorer like a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan that just transcends the game, where it's if you need a bucket, I got a bucket for you. And I don't know if Booker is quite to the level where I'm confident enough to say Devin Booker can be the best player on a championship team. I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he's good. I don't think he's great. I don't know if you agree with that.
I do and I don't. So how old is he? I'm going to start there.
He's young.
He's 24. I'm pulling him up on Basketball Reference to get his age.
My internet's slow.
He is how old?
He's 24.
24. Okay, so I was right, but plenty of time. Think about it. I feel like you look at Giannis 2 years ago. That's when he won his first MVP.
Sure.
If you look at he was, I guess at that point, 24. So he had really kind of started hitting his championship threshold there. Who's to say where Booker is 2 years from now? Why can't he be going and making this big leap that you see?
I 100% think he can. There's no doubt in my mind that Devin Booker has the mentality, the frame, the athleticism, the skill to put it all together. But having the potential and actually doing it is slightly different. And I would love to see Devin Booker lead the Phoenix Suns back to the finals at some point in the future. I don't think it's going to be with Chris Paul. And that's just because I think the storylines change in the West. A healthy Lakers team is very hard to beat. Healthy Clippers team. If Kawhi's on that Clippers team, do the Suns still make it out in 6? Do they make it out in 7? Right. So, I think a lot of change, and there's a lot changing around the league. We think about other big names who might be on the move, right? Kevin Love's out of Cleveland. There's been talks about Colin Sexton leaving. There's been talks about Damian Lillard leaving. A lot of Damian Lillard talks have been more rumors than anything else, but I think a lot might change this offseason where we see a lot of people who are upset where they are, or, teams trying to make that move to set them up for future success.
I could totally see the summer being an arms race, because I think it's very clear that a lot of teams, there's not many teams differentiated from the rest of the field. And I think that even includes Milwaukee, even though they just won. I think the true favorite next season is Brooklyn. I think having those 3 coming in for a refreshed new season, with an off season to prepare, because they did only get Harden midway through, and then all of them kind of spent time hurt. I think that team is going to be very hard to beat. And so I think a lot of these good teams are going to shed all sorts of assets and, make all sorts of interesting creative moves to get better. Because I think they realize that is a team of LeBron and Anthony Davis and then like Caruso beating them? No, like they're just not. And so I think that realistically, you're going to see teams make pushes to whether it's, Kemba Walker's stuck in OKC now. Does a team go and try and get him? And even though he's injury prone, when he does play, he's not bad. So,
but wait, Kemba Walker. Think about the value Kemba Walker might have on a Lakers team. Do you not think he changes the way that team
100%.
plays? Do you not think he? Right, because
100% over compared to Schroeder, 100%.
100% would be better, I think.
And so, like that, I've seen Russell Westbrook linked to the Lakers. I've seen Chris Paul, obviously, that's one. But like, I think you see a bunch of these teams who are gonna try and make pushes. Like, I think the Sixers are definitely gonna try and make moves. I think if Dame becomes available, they're probably the front runner to get him. I think. Actually, Vegas set the odds. I think they are the front runner to get him. But so I think that you're going to see a lot of these teams towards the top doing some crazy things. I think that you're going to see a lot of role players on the move, and then maybe some like subsequent trades between that. I think this draft in a week. It is actually in a week. It's a week from today. Now that I think about it, now that we're recording, I think the draft is going to be very interesting. I could see a ton of teams moving around because, like, I think that there's some good teams down at the bottom. Look at the Warriors down towards the bottom. They have 2 picks in the lottery.
I'm looking at a tweet here right now. Potential Warriors Blazers trade for Damian Lillard. Blazers receive 7th overall pick, 14th overall pick, Wiggins for the salary match, and then James Wiseman. I think the 7th pick, the 14th pick, and James Wiseman alone make a very comparable package for a true superstar. And so you think about the Warriors and the potential moves they can make. I think they're a dangerous team. And they get Klay Thompson back hopefully, and Steph Curry is obviously still Steph Curry. So I don't know if you want to continue to expand upon the potential roster that the Warriors could put together.
I think the thing with them is that the window's shrinking if you're going to win a championship.
100%.
You want to keep Steph. Realistically, you want him to be a lifer. Whether he does or not, I guess that's remains to be seen. I would imagine he would. But if he starts to see that window's closing and they need to shift towards a rebuild, is he going to want to do that? If Klay comes back from this injury not looking good, which I know the jump shot will probably still be there, that doesn't really go away, but it's more like the other intangibles and like the quickness and defense, the lateral movement. If that fades, and it very well could, because an Achilles and an ACL back to back and having not played in like 2.5 years is
going to be rusty.
It's going to
take time.
Right. So you look at what they can do to try and, build for this smaller window of a future. Getting another good, strong player and making Klay your third option might be the best bet.
If we set it, let's say they don't make a move or anything like that. Do you not think the Warriors are a playoff team coming back next year? And that just makes it harder. I think the NBA is looking to keep the play-in tournament. The Warriors were a 9 seed. Can you see the Warriors potentially locking up, 7 or 8, something up there? And that just makes it harder for a team like Phoenix, who you might not know where they're going to be next year whether or not they keep Chris Paul. Do you think they even make it back into the playoffs? Or other teams that are struggling, like what are the Mavericks going to do if they don't make the playoffs or something like that next year, right? So
yeah, so I think that there's a lot of interesting teams in the West, and it does make the Warriors case even more interesting because there is, with the play-in, look at this year, there's a good chance they just end up missing. Because I think towards the top, you're still going to have the Jazz being good. You're going to have the Lakers being good. You're going to have the Nuggets being good. Even without Jamal Murray, I think they're still good. Realistically, even without Kawhi Leonard with the ACL, the Clippers are still very balanced and good. And Paul George showed in these playoffs that he can kind of lead a team as a first option. I think they're a playoff team. I think the Mavericks are a playoff team. Even with their struggles and Porzingis being bad and whatever, Luka's so damn good that I think they're going to be a playoff team again. Remains to be seen with Portland, what they do. If they try and keep it together, then they're probably a playoff team. If they trade McCollum for someone or something like that, I think they're still a playoff team. But then you get into the weird teams. You get into the Grizzlies, who got very good. You get into the Pelicans, who are underperforming, but could be good and have good players and good assets to maybe make moves and get good. The only team that I really don't think has a shot is the Kings. Like realistically, everyone in the West, I think, but the Spurs maybe not, but you never know.
The Spurs are so in the air. I think that they keep DeRozan.
Oh, and the
They
Rockets.
might,
Sorry, I completely forgot about the Rockets.
Rockets.
But I'd say
I
other than
think
those three teams, you have what 12 other teams that have a legitimate case to make the playoffs.
right for
So
10 spots plus the play-in 7 through 10. So
right, and so that's why I think if the Warriors don't, and given how Wiseman looked last year, and I think they're probably losing Oubre, which they probably don't mind because he was bad, but I think that there's a lot that they need to figure out, and so they have assets right now to move.
right.
They should be on the phone with a lot of teams trying to see if they can get something done. If Ben Simmons is available, hell yeah, you absolutely pick up the phone, you try and get something done. He would be
another huge name.
Right, he would be a super interesting fit with that team. I'm not saying it's
I
perfect. I think it depends on what they do with Draymond too, but like still, I've seen Porzingis rumored there, and like I think that's an interesting fit. I think Porzingis is bad, but I still think it's interesting when you put him next to Steph and Clay for sure. I just think that there's a lot of things that are going to happen this offseason that it's so hard to predict, what some of these teams are going to do, like in the short term, let alone look towards the future. Like we're talking about what our team's going to do 3 years from now. What the hell's going to happen this offseason? Because it's an arms race to beat the Nets for sure.
So I want to loop back around to Ben Simmons because Daryl Morey is sitting in the driver's seat of the Philadelphia Sixers. We've seen him make big deals before, bringing in Chris Paul, bringing in Russell Westbrook. Do you think Daryl Morey tries and fix some of the problems that the Sixers had by moving on from Ben Simmons?
God, this is like the question of the offseason. I don't think you could sell at a worse time with him. Like, I think his stock is so damn low. And it's crazy too, because he was number 2 in voting for Defensive Player of the Year and arguably should have won. You could make the case. I think that if it weren't for his disappearance in the playoffs and whatever confidence crisis he had, like, I still think that I would want him. If I was a team that could trade for him, I would want him. If you're like, I'm just even like, for example, if you're the Blazers who are like, screw it, we're going to kind of blow it up and go to a rebuild, like that intrigues me. Like he's young. He's very good at what he's good at. He's a good facilitator. He's a great defender. Yeah, he's absolute dog shit at scoring. Sure, fine.
Right.
There are plenty of good players like that. Like, let's take Giannis, for example. The dude can't shoot. He can't. He was so bad. Counting at the free throw line even. Like, everything about it, so bad. People let him shoot threes. Like, he's still dominant. And, like, I think Ben Simmons is capable of things that Giannis does. I'm not saying he's as athletically gifted and can do all of them, but who's stopping him from just attacking the rim and, like, getting, contact dunks and crap? Like, develop that spin move, do whatever. Like, I think that there are ways for him to get better without necessarily fixing the true issue. And so that's why I think the Sixers might want to hold on to him, at least in the short term. If it's clear it's not working out, you up his trade value a little bit. Like, he looked good in the regular season, and he will again. And then you're going to be like, is Ben Simmons fixed? Then you can move on from him. I don't know. That's how I look at it.
I agree with you where I think he looks great in the regular season, especially when you want to try and load manage for Joel Embiid. I think Simmons by himself with shooters and another bucket getter like CJ McCollum, for instance, would be unbeatable. I think at the end of the day, though, I think that it just won't work in the playoffs. It's about winning in the playoffs. It doesn't matter about the regular season, right? The Brooklyn Nets might even not be the 1 seed next year. They don't care about winning in the regular season. They'll load manage all their guys, but when push comes to shove, they're gonna blow out every team they see in the playoffs. And that's just how it is. And that's why I can't continue to allow Ben Simmons to be on this team, especially if I'm trying to keep someone like Joel Embiid around. I think I move him, and I think if I'm the team trading for Ben Simmons, I'm a team like the Portland Trailblazers who are looking to be bad. Why not take that risk? Or if I'm the Rockets and I'm looking to be bad, why not? I mean, the Rockets don't really have assets, but if we're going to be bad, might as well try with Ben Simmons. That's the way I feel about it.
I think he is way too unique of a player, even given his faults, because it is undeniable. Like, there's an issue. There is, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He is still so unique in how agile he is at his size. his physical presence, his ability to switch pretty much 1 to 5. It is incredible. And so I think that baseline at a minimum at that age, how are you not trying to at least be like, you know what, maybe a change of scenery, we can fix this, especially if you're not a team that's like, we're making this move to go win a championship. You're almost doing it to be like, we can buy ourselves a little time by trading for him, trying to develop him and fix him, and then we add to it and go win. Like, I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am just blatantly wrong, and I'm discrediting what happened in these playoffs because they were bad, but
very bad. I think if you're the Sixers, it's time to make a decision. Is it Embiid or is it Simmons?
Yeah, right? I mean, God, you got to get rid of Simmons.
Right. That's what I mean. You can't get rid of Embiid at the like. It just won't happen, and so I think it's just time to move on from Simmons. Try and get the most you can for him, and have it be that that's the chapter's closed. But
I also do think that a lot could have changed, and not to get back into the injury thing again, but I mean, Embiid was playing on that meniscus injury. Like, I still think that does that change the series? Could he have been more dominant and maybe it alleviates some of the pressure off of Ben Simmons? I don't know. Like, I don't know that. And maybe I'm trying to look for excuses, but I just think there are a lot of things that could have gone differently with the Sixers. I think Danny Green got hurt. That was a huge, huge hit because it just takes further spacing away from Simmons and Embiid. So I just think that there are like things that hindered that team that may have been more detrimental to Ben Simmons specifically than just the Sixers. But I mean, look, he was bad. There's no sugarcoating it. He was bad.
There really isn't. I think also it would be good to mention the Hawks because
for sure
they played well above what our perceived ceiling of that team was.
Yeah.
When things weren't working out early in the year, we discredited them a little bit where we were saying, they bring in Bogdanovich, they bring in Gallinari, they got John Collins, Clint Capella is finally healthy. And we're saying, like, I don't understand what's happening here, but it's so great to see them kind of reach that full potential and make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I mean, Trae Young has looked unreal.
Yeah. So the Knick fan in me, having watched that series, was thinking,
yes,
we don't have a good point guard. We had small forwards guarding him, and he was torching us, and it was bad.
Right.
I was then internalizing saying, all right, we're a bad team. You see him go and play the Sixers, and it's like, you know what? It's legit. And you look at what they were doing as a team. They were deep. They could throw a bunch of different options at you. And yeah, were the Knicks ill-equipped to beat that? Absolutely. But it goes to show that other teams were as well. Like, they were not a bad team. That said, this feels like the Heat making the finals last year to me. That I don't know that I buy in that much. I think if you have them in the first round playing it, so I'm just listing teams in the East that are good, like legitimately good. If you have, so it's probably gonna be the Nets somewhere in the top 3, the Bucks again, probably the Sixers again, I would imagine. Miami isn't bad. Celtics are not bad. Then yeah, there's a little flux in there. I think the Pacers will turn it around now that they have Rick Carlisle. But like, I think that there is enough in the East that they might not have home court, the Hawks. And if they have to play one of those top teams, they might lose in the first round. Like, I don't think that they're like this contender yet. And maybe they do something this offseason.
They beat up on someone, no? If the Sixers face the Hawks in the first round, let's say the Sixers move on, you don't think the Hawks take it to 6, maybe 7 games?
Maybe. I mean, like, I think that there's so much that's going to happen. Like, I don't know that these teams are going to look the exact same that they did this year, but based on what I'm seeing, I don't know. I can't help but feel like, I don't know. Trae Young is great. It'll remains to be seen. Will they keep John Collins? Because John Collins was good in the playoffs. Capella was dominant, but with the wrong matchup, might not be. I think that's just the nature of having a rim running center like that. I think that on the wings, yeah, they have a lot of options. And granted, some of them were hurt. Like, you go down the list of like Herter, Bogdanovich.
Herter played amazing. Herter played very, very well.
Right, but then you have oh my God, the guy from Virginia, whose name
DeAndre Hunter. He didn't play at all.
Right, exactly. So I think that like there are guys, and then you get down to the
Also
Gallinaris and the whoever's. Like I
he's
just
much
think
more
that
of a forward, Hunter. I don't think he has the
right.
ability to kind of put it on the floor and make a play. But I like here we
But
are
then you
talking
also
about the
have Cam
roster.
Reddish too. Like you have
Cam Reddish
options.
looks very good.
Right. So I think
I
that they
think
have versatility.
I
But what
think
were you
they're
saying?
looking. I think they have Trey Young. I think they have Clint Capella, and I think that's great. I think they're trying to figure out everything in between. I don't
Right.
think they have a. I don't think they have a option at forward that they like. I don't think they have an option at wing with that they like without having that forward.
Yeah.
I think if they just find a suitable candidate who's going to back up, who's just going to start their forward, like they need a Jay Crowder or a.
The problem is their
I
cap situation is now a little funky because they do have a lot of money on the
right.
books. And so I
Well,
think, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. Do you let Collins walk? Depending on what he gets, do you match it and keep him? Like, I think there are weird things that the Hawks have to figure out. Because,
best case scenario, you sign and trade for something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally an option, and I bet teams would consider it. Like I said, like I think there's going to be a lot of people on the move because I think teams are realizing that, oh, Brooklyn is like a legitimate force, and it's going to be hard to beat them. And I think you look at the Hawks, and can they? No, realistically, no. That said, you bring in some extra, I feel like they do need more legitimate star power, but I don't know how much of that is really on the move for what they need. Like they don't need a guard.
No, they don't need a guard. They have Huerter. They have Bogdanovich. They have Trey Young. They're set at guard. But who are they playing at small forward and who are they playing at power forward? With John Collins in and out. Plus, I don't like, yeah, John Collins can shoot, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him a forward. I think he's still too immobile to be considered that forward. I think you play him as a big. But they have DeAndre Hunter. They have Cam Reddish. But they're still very young. I think you need a more veteran presence who's going to be able to guard someone like Kevin Durant, or guard a LeBron, or that's just
That's fine. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think there are so many teams that are kind of in limbo as far as like competing for a title that it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like for example, and I'm only looking at this because there was an article that came out yesterday, but the Knicks, for example, they aren't competing. They have guys on their roster that, if on competing teams, could be valuable. So Reggie Bullock is the guy I saw they were talking about. Like he's getting looked at like across the board, and I think he would be a very good wing presence. Like he's good at defense. He can hit threes. Like is he going to win you the championship single-handedly? No. But when you have something set up and he can add to it, absolutely. Like he would be perfect on the Lakers. Also, I'm sniffling. I'm allergic to something. I do. I think you're going to see a lot of like non-consequential players that like on their own, you're like, oh, okay. But they're going to go into good situations and it's going to make an impact. Look at Bobby Portis this year with the Bucks. Like he found the right role and he was good throughout these playoffs. Like he legitimately won that, or not won them, but like without him, they wouldn't have won games. So
how do you feel about the Raptors? I'm looking here at Pascal Siakam on the move rumor.
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry's a free agent. They have the number 4 draft pick.
I feel like Lowry's interesting because I know that he's committed to that organization, but they're kind of heading in a different direction. So I don't know that you see them keep him. I don't. Like, I think he might walk for greener pastures, which, again, Philadelphia, he's from there. He went to Villanova. Feels like it makes a ton of sense. But I don't know. Like, I think they're in a weird spot. They have a good draft pick. Like, they have a lot of things working in their favor, but they have to figure out what they want to be and, what their pieces actually are. Because you're right. Siakam potentially being on the move, like, yeah, he isn't what they signed him to be. And he hasn't. Like, they signed, basically what I look at is, after that playoff run, they signed him to that contract to basically be what Julius Randle was this year. Like kind of take the reins and become like a number one option, but lead you to the playoffs and like competing regularly and being like a legit all NBA talent.
Sure.
He's not that. At least he wasn't this year and realistically not before then either. So what do you do with him? Do you move him? Who's going to take him? Like, what do you I think that's another one where it's going to be a team trading, just kind of like buying low, seeing if we can restore stock, make him better, change the scenery. I don't know.
Does he not fit on a team like the Atlanta Hawks?
He would. He totally would. I mean, I think he would
he'd be a great fit there. And I think he's more suited to guard a Kevin Durant or LeBron James than a John Collins is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But then you get into the logistics of it, and it's like, what do the Hawks give up? Like, what do the Raptors even want? Because, like, you just signed Fred VanVleet to a longer contract. You're about to sign Norman Powell to a longer contract.
Well, if you're the Raptors,
Trent.
if you're the Raptors, you say, we have Fred VanVleet, we have Gary Trent. We need a potential star. You know, maybe you make some moves, create some space, and you say, oh, Kyle Lowry wants to be in Philadelphia. We'll sign and trade Kyle Lowry for Ben Simmons, you know, and then you trade Siakam for, let's say, like John Collins, who can shoot, you know, and that's obviously a very perfect offseason or a outrageously, you know, unrealistic, but you can make moves like that. Don't count the Raptors out, especially with Masai Ujiri, who we know can make those cutthroat decisions.
Right.
You can make the decisions that put you from an okay team to a good team, or a good team to a great team. So,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that they are in a good spot. Kind of like what I said. I think they're potentially going to be moving on draft night. I could see them doing something with that pick because they have what?
Mhm.
Let me pull this up. I had Tankathon up. Right. So they're the 4th pick.
Right.
Depending on where they're headed, they're either going to keep that and invest in it, or could you see them trying to move up? Could you see them trying to, you know, Cleveland might want Siakam and number 4 and they move up to 3 or something like that. And I know it's a bad example because that's not like a perfect trade, but could you see them moving number 4? Like, I could see them trading it. 1, I could see them trying to trade up. I could see them trying to trade Siakam for even more lottery capital. Like, I think there's so much that they could do that, you know, why wouldn't the Warriors have interest in Siakam? Like, you look at teams like that. I don't know. I just think, and that might be a bad example. I'm kind of just shooting from the hip, but I could see a lot of movement happening. And I think a week from today, teams are going to start showing their true colors of where they think they're at. Because I think until the draft happens, it's going to be a lot of rumors. But then when you actually put pen to paper and see what's happening, the writing's going to end up being on the wall for what teams have in store for some of their players, their free agents, if there's any trades, that sort of thing. So I think we're going to learn a lot in a week.
Okay, last question, and I think we should move towards the draft. Do you think Miles Turner is going to be traded?
Again, what's the fit? Where does he go? Because
I would have said a shot blocking center who shoots threes.
I think he's really good, but
I think he's very scalable. Right?
The Mavericks could probably use him. Like, I think like he could actually do things that Porzingis doesn't want to do, and then he could let Porzingis sit on the outside a bit more with like a more traditional but still floor spacing center. I don't know. Like,
what are you giving up that isn't Porzingis?
To get, well, that's the other thing. I don't think that the Pacers necessarily want to pay him. So I think it's like a double, like they're kind of trading him to get him off the books. And then you can send back what? I don't know, like Maxi Kleba or something like that.
Right.
Like, I know it's not like an even trade, but maybe you do like Josh Richardson to Maxi Kleba.
Might not be even trade on paper, but there are some type of intangible value that the Pacers get out of it.
Right. And it's like, I don't necessarily think that's the perfect trade, but I'm just thinking like in general, you could see that. You could see, because for example, Nurkic is a free agent. Like, could Portland want him? I don't know that they would, but like, I think there's a few teams that you could, and again, you have a lot of weird teams that are kind of hamstrung with money, but like, I bet the Clippers would like him. You know, like I think there are a few teams. But yeah, I don't know if he gets dealt is the problem. And especially now with the new head coach who might want to work with them, it's hard to tell.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
But so I'm going back through our Twitter history. We're getting to a lot of draft coverage as the combine and whatnot was happening a couple of weeks ago. We talked about the Pacers having the 4th pick. Obviously, the Pistons are sitting at 1.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You expect
Cade is 1.
You expect him to go first.
I mean, realistically, there's I'd be shocked if he doesn't.
Drafting second is Houston.
Yep. And I
So
mean, I think that's interesting because they don't really need a big, and it sounds like the consensus is that Evan Mobley from USC is
mhm.
number 2. Like he is the next best player in the draft, apparently. Now, I'm not considering myself an analyst, but that's what they say. But since they now have Christian Wood, like, do you just take him and make it work, or do you take Suggs, maybe Jalen Green, someone like that?
I think there's a lot of interesting prospects up in the top 10. You talked about Jalen Green, who played on that G League Ignite team,
and his
Jonathan
teammate
Kuminga.
Yeah, I like Kuminga. Apparently, there's potential issues with his attitude and his work ethic and that's why he's not hired.
I think he's super athletic. I think he has a lot of skills.
He's got a super good build for the NBA. Like he's quick,
he's like,
big, long, like strong.
ESPN's really, got him at 6'8", 220.
He feels like he could be a dominant player in the NBA. But again, if there are those attitude issues, that becomes concerning.
I watched a Jonathan Kuminga interview. He was born and raised in the Congo. I think he struggles to speak English. And I think that's why it's such a turnoff, because the guy is so uncomfortable communicating in a language he's not comfortable with. And I think people sit there and say, oh, he's got attitude issues, but I think he's just a shy person struggling to string the sentences together. And you talk about things like work ethic, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of rumors about stuff like that, but you never really know. I think in the right situation, I think he could be a real star. I think if you encourage anybody the right way, you can make it work.
Well, right. I think it also depends on where these players land, which gets back to me talking about the Rockets. Like, do you take Mobley at 2? Like, that might not be the best thing for him and his development if he's playing with Christian Wood, or it's perfect. And, he has someone to kind of lean on a little bit, and, he can develop other parts of his game that he wouldn't be able to if he was playing the traditional 5. Like, I don't know.
I think Mobley could be, although here we are talking about Mobley being potentially the second or third pick. I think Mobley could be a guy who drops down there 5 to 8, right? Because if you think about it, Detroit's going to take Cade.
For sure.
You got Houston at 2, who's Christian Wood. Maybe they're not really looking to draft a big, so let's say they pass on him. Then you move down to Cleveland, who has Jarrett Allen.
Right.
Do they draft Mobley? Do they put him next to Jarrett Allen? Do you play him at power forward? Maybe not.
That same issue.
Right. Toronto could draft him, right? Toronto needs someone in there.
I think if he's there for Toronto, they take him. But I doubt he falls that far. I feel like there also could be trades towards the top of this draft outside of number 1. Like I think I saw something that the Cavs might be trying to move up to 2 somehow. I also saw that they might be trying to move out of 3. So I think it really depends. Like I guess it depends what phones ring and what offers are on the table, but I don't think anyone is set at where they're at yet, other than the Pistons.
And I think a lot of the picks are up in the air too. We talk about Jalen Green, we talk about Jonathan Kuminga. I've seen reports Scotty Barnes going 4th overall to the Raptors. Apparently, a lot of teams are very high on him. High IQ, more of a point forward than a true forward, but he's got the frame, right? ESPN has him listed at 6'9", 230 pounds. He's going to play one of your forward spots. They relate him a lot to like Ben Simmons or a little more outside shooting. Apparently he's been shooting the ball well at some camps and stuff like that. So
no, and I mean, I think that, even going down the list here, like I think you look at Keon Johnson out of Tennessee is really good. I'm not sold on like Franz Wagner from Michigan. And
I think Franz Wagner is one of those guys you draft in the late lottery. You're a team that dropped a little too far, and I think he makes an impact on your team.
Yeah, like there are definitely other guys that I think could be better than him that get picked later. Like I'm big on Moses Moody out of Arkansas. I think he's really good, but I think he's fallen like a little lower.
I think that's just because other people's stocks have risen.
Like, could be.
Josh Giddey, I think a lot of these international prospects, Josh Giddey out of Australia.
Yep.
There's a guy from Turkey who plays center, Sengun. I can't say it.
Yeah.
I think those guys are just higher. And I know as a Knicks fan, you're very high on James Bouknight out of
Yeah.
UConn.
Well, he's an offensive, like absolute fire, like powerhouse. The dude is a machine on offense, bad at defense.
He's a bucket getter.
Right. A little undersized. Like I just think he's a little frail and not necessarily short. I just think he's, he could be bigger, which will come. But I just think a guy who is that effective offensively, especially for a Knicks team that is pretty much devoid of that, he would be a great asset. So I think that there are some interesting picks. I think like Corey Kispert from Gonzaga. Like I think a team that's pretty established right now can just have him go right in on your bench as like a role-playing shooter. Like why can't he go be like a Joe Harris?
100% could. I think he has that potential to be a Joe Harris, Kyle Korver type player.
Maybe not necessarily year one, but like he'll knock down a few threes for you year one for sure. Like I don't think it's like a necessarily like, okay, you're in trouble because you're putting him on the court. But I think that this draft is going to be really interesting. I think that it's more intriguing to me, not necessarily because of the prospects. And like, yeah, I am intrigued by them. It's more what the teams do around them. So like, I think that there is going to be a lot of movement. And I think that when they are moving, it's not necessarily with players in mind, but so much as like other pieces that are currently on their teams moving to kind of do that. And it's like, oh, okay, we'll take this pick too and draft with it. Is my guess. But maybe I'm being a little, I don't even know the right word, like naive. Is that even the right word? I just think that, like, are you outside of Cade Cunningham? I realistically, I would put it as I have 5 guys that I'm like set on are very good. Cunningham, Mobley, Suggs, Jalen Green, and Jonathan Kuminga are like my top 5. I think that they are very good. Outside of that, I'm not really sold on anyone. Like, I think that realistically, you could.
But you don't think a lot of these guys could make impacts? Like,
I could talk myself into any of them or talk myself out of any of them. Like, I'm not the same way I just said about Corey Kispert being a Joe Harris. Like, yeah, he could be, or he could just be bad. Like, he could legitimately be bad. He didn't look good in the national championship game. Like, he kind of faded a little bit in that run against college kids. Like, that's not the NBA. And especially for a player built like him, that's really going to be more of a shooter. That's concerning for sure. So like, I don't know, like I could easily talk myself out of him. That said, he's a good shooter. I think he could be a Joe Harris. Let me think who else, like Davion Mitchell, the point guard out of Baylor. Like, yeah, good physical, but small. And like, I just think that there are some issues there. Like, I wasn't sold on him to begin with, but now he's suddenly like this lottery pick, potentially top 10 pick. I just think there's a lot of things that I could talk myself into or talk myself out of, you know?
But isn't that that's like the constant gray area of a non-top 3 pick, right? When you think about a top 3 pick, you think about like a Zion or an RJ Barrett. You look at players like that, and you say like, wow, like I'm secure that this guy at some point in his career will be an all-star level player, right?
I guess
and
I
then
should. You're right, and I guess I should clarify that. I don't necessarily mean that in a way that like I'm not sold. I'm more saying like, if I'm picking at 7, do I think I'm going to get a guy who's definitively better than a guy at like 18? In this draft, I don't feel like it. I feel like it's deep enough with enough of these guys who are like, have those variables and things that I'm like, oh, he's good at this, but he's bad at this and this, that, the other thing. Whereas in other years, I feel like there are kind of tiers and it trickles down. This, I feel like you have that top tier of like 5 or so guys. Then there's a big, big second tier of a lot of guys that I think could be good or could be garbage.
So do you think that was because, like, when you look at those guys between 6 to 20, a lot of them are second-year players, people who could have come out as freshmen, got drafted in the second round, something like that, and then they decide to go back to school. Do you think that the pandemic has created just a addition of talent that necessarily wouldn't be there? Do you think that's one reason why? Or
I mean, maybe. Like, even for example, I'm looking at last year's draft. There was clearly the top. You had Edwards, Wiseman, LaMelo. Like they were going to be the top three no matter what. Then you kind of had, and I know Patrick Williams went fourth. That was kind of a shock, but like I'll ignore that. You had Okoro, Okongwu, Killian Hayes, Obi Toppin. Like everyone was talking about them being kind of the next tier. Then you break it down from there. You have, and I also thought Avdia was going to go a little higher, so I'll include him. But then you have like Devin Vassell, Tyrese Halliburton, who fell a little bit more than he should have. Kira Lewis. Then I feel like after that tier, you had the Cole Anthony, Aaron Nesmith. Pokushevsky went higher than I thought he would. But I just think like Sadiq Bey fell pretty far. Achua fell pretty far. But I still felt like there was that clear drop in talent kind of over every 5 picks or so. Whereas in this draft, I don't necessarily have that same feeling. But maybe I'm wrong.
I think I agree with you. I think this draft is very deep, and I think it's because a lot of these guys didn't want to come out in a pandemic. There's more earning potential here this year than there was last year. So guys are coming out, and obviously you still have the same one and done freshman recruiting class, right? You got guys like Jalen Johnson, who was a top 10 recruit. You knew he was going to come out after his first year at Duke, right? So I think the addition of all these second-year players who still show this huge upside, only being 20, create a very deep draft, which is good, right? You want to see that. The other thing you want to think about is if I'm sitting at 8 and I'm saying to myself, I could draft, a guy like James Bouknight or Franz Wagner, or I could trade down and draft someone like Kai Jones, who might have a similar impact on my team. Are we going to see more trades? Are we going to see less trades? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I would be more tempted to trade back, but then I also think there's, and again, I still have the Knicks in mind because I've really been focusing on them for the drafts. But like, they have 19 and 21. Like, package those and move up. Like, I think realistically, move up and get your guy versus waiting. Like, at this point, you might as well. You don't have to wait. That said, if someone's offering you 19 and 21 and your pick like 12, I would think about taking it if I wasn't set on anyone. And like part of the reason the Knicks package those 2 picks and move up is because they don't have space on their roster for 2 rookies. Like, I just think that I think there's going to be plenty of teams that make decisions like that where it's going to be a little interesting. I think, again, though, you're also going to have teams like the Warriors where if they decide to make a move with their 2 picks, like that's going to change things. I just think that there's a lot that could be on the move. And so, frankly, if I were on the clock, like say, for example, I'm looking at, I'll go with the Kings at 9.
Sure.
Why don't I use that pick? I would use it. Like, I wouldn't trade back. I don't think I have enough established to move back. Unless you're offered like a big wow package to go get it. Like, I don't know. Or if you're the Kings at 9 and the Knicks call and say, hey, you want 19, 21, and then we also have, I think, like 54 or something, like 50. Would you take those 3 picks for number 9? Like, again, a bad value trade offer. I'm thinking of this off the top of my head.
Right.
You might think about it. So I just don't know that you're set on necessarily drafting Josh Giddey, but
you think there'll be a reluctance to kind of swap where you are. You think people want to move up to get their guy, but obviously drafting 9th is more of an advantage than drafting 10th.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is more situational than anything else. Like, I think, like, you have to look at it on a team by team type basis, and like if you're looking at, the Magic at 8, they're gonna take their pick. If they could move up, they would. Is kind of how I look at it. Like they're in rebuild mode basically. The Kings, I don't know, because you still have De'Aaron Fox, and even if you want to move on from Bagley, Heald, whatever, you still kind of have something. So maybe you don't just want to take a pick. You want to go trade back, get maybe a veteran player and a later pick. Maybe. The Pelicans are another one at 10. Like, they're young, but they also do want to start competing and making the playoffs. Like, do they think about trading back and getting other pieces or whatever?
Right.
Maybe not, but
they could use a defensive point guard like Alfred Payton or something like that.
Yes, of course. Bring him home. Get him the hell off my team. But then like the Hornets at 11, like they want to make the playoffs, absolutely. And like I think they were I
think they have a lot to work with. with LaMelo, Miles Bridges looked good. PJ Washington looked good.
Yeah.
They got Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier still. So I think they have a weird mix. I don't know if it's the right time for the Hornets to move up or down in the trade. I mean, obviously they want to move up. If they can grab somebody to pair with LaMelo, I think it would be a great time to do that. But
yeah, and I agree with that. But that's exactly why I think a week from now we're going to see where they think they are. Because I think it'll be clear if they decide to move back, you're going to have an idea of like, okay, they're trying to build with more younger players. Because if you're trading back, realistically, what you're getting is like 2 picks in this draft or something like that. So like, all right, we'll get 2 shots. Maybe only one of them's good. Maybe both of them are good. But you at least give yourself more options and you try and fill out your roster that way. Or you either stick with it, draft one guy and then try and fill out your roster in free agency, or you try and move up and you just kind of commit to being young. Maybe you move on from Terry Rozier or that sort of thing. So I just think there's like a bunch of interesting teams in this draft and free agency that there's no real clear cut to me, like decisions other than like the Pistons taking Cade.
Right. Okay.
Which is, I know it seems like a cop out of an answer, but I just feel like there's way too much variability right now.
I think we've been on for a while now.
I was gonna say, yeah, this was good. We haven't done one in a while, so we're giving everyone what they need. But
lastly, I wanna ask a question. You have a lot of high-end point guards on the market this year. Reggie Jackson, Dennis Schroeder, Lonzo Ball, all looking to get a huge free agency deal. Which one do you think what point guard do you think is gonna get their $20 million desired deal?
So I think Chris Paul is going to get whatever he wants. I think he's going to get like the 3-year 100, whatever, whether it's from the Suns or elsewhere. I think he's going to get paid. I think Lowry will make money.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like older and didn't look as good as Chris Paul is kind of how I look at it. So like it's a little harder, but like he still is very good. I think less, like he'll probably get, I don't know, 25 million. I would pay him that for sure.
Do you think Shooter gets a $20 million deal?
Oh God, he's asking for like 4 years, 100 million. And like,
yeah,
I would not do that. I think that's a bad contract. So like, I don't know that he'll get what he's asking for. Maybe in a short term, like he gets a short-term deal with more money, but like, no, why would you? I mean, he did not play well as a Laker. And yeah, was he good with the Thunder? Sure. But like did not translate when it needed to. And so that's concerning.
I think he could finesse a team for $20 million.
I think Lonzo will too. I think Lonzo just being a restricted free agent, like I think teams will offer him a little. They'll be willing to offer him a little more just to try and pry him away from the Pelicans. So like I think that, but I don't know. Like I think there's a lot.
I think Lonzo might actually be worth it though. I think Lonzo's worth $18 million a year.
Yeah, I think anything more. I think that's the problem. Is probably, but the Pelicans would realistically match that. So if any team wants him, you're going to have to go like over 20.
The Atlanta Hawks paid Dennis Schroeder 15.5 over 4 years, 15.5 a year for 4 years.
Right.
After his 4-year rookie stint with the Hawks. So I think Schroeder could do it. I think $20 million is a good goal for him.
I think so.
We'll see. I think it's funny that all the reports of this dude wants 20 million and everyone's like, whoa, no way he's getting 20 million.
Well, he wants 25. 20. There's a huge difference between 25 and 20.
There's been a lot of guys who have been like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get 20. Oh, Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre was like, yeah.
Kelly Oubre's agent is working this offseason. That dude is linked to every team. Everyone wants him. Like it's almost ridiculous at this point. It's almost counterproductive to him trying to gain intrigue in himself. Like I feel like
he's
there's just no way all these teams want Kelly Oubre after the season he had. There's just no way.
He's got the right. He's like the perfect basketball player. He's like the perfect height, skill set to be the best basketball player ever. But
he doesn't have the IQ. He doesn't have the IQ. Like he doesn't have the whatever the internal thing is that makes someone.
He doesn't have like the psychopath that Michael Jordan has.
Yes, like something like that. He just is missing something, and like, yeah, everything about him, like you would think on paper, this dude's good. Like if you were looking at him on like a draft piece of paper, you'd be like, all right, yeah, hell yeah, sign me up for this guy. No, absolutely not. No, not after this year when he was like 0 for 41 for 3 to start the year or whatever it was.
Oh my god, he was on my fantasy team too. I was so upset.
Yeah, I won't forget that. Are you kidding? But no, I don't know. I think it'll be cool. I think this offseason is going to be very cool.
I just want to say we're hating on all these people for trying to get money. I'm the biggest Chris Middleton hater out there, and he just won a championship. So.
I know. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I actually forgot about that. You were angry about that contract. It worked out.
Like, I can't believe they paid him all that money, and then he ended up being good.
He's worth it. Like, he proved he's worth it. So
also
good for Chris Middleton.
Are we getting matching half Bucks, half Knicks Bobby Portis jerseys?
I almost just want the Bucks one. I think the Bucks version of Bobby Portis is the best version of Bobby Portis.
It's like the most elite crazy eye Bobby Portis is Bucks Bobby Portis.
I mean, just him running up and down the court doing like weird sprints and things and like struts. Like it was awesome. They all they loved him there. They embraced him. I'm happy for him. Good for him.
It is good for him.
Reconfiguring what's his face or Mirotich's face when he was on the Bulls. Going from the locker room fights to winning a championship in like 3 years. Good for you, Bobby Portis.
Bobby Portis stays winning.
Yep, we'll get the jerseys.
All right.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. For Tim, if you made it this long, Mark, if you've made it this long, thanks for listening. The Hoop Troop is back. So we'll have this new format. We'll sprinkle in some guests and things here or there, but me and Luke will record more regularly. That way we get way more basketball content for all of you. All right. Let me stop this recording. This is the Hoop Troop. Thanks.